Hello and welcome back to another edition of Stampede Radio. I'm your host, Chris Blystone, and I'm joined as always by Jim Campbell and Chris Shepard. How's it going, guys? There you are.
Good. Hey.
All right. Well, this is our first official video podcast. We're also going to obviously still be recording the audio version, but it's nice to see you guys. We did an audio, or we had video component on our last podcast, but we didn't actually post it anywhere, and we may delete this, and you'll never even know that it existed on YouTube, except for that we just told you. But yeah, so new avenue of possible content. I'm excited to kind of explore this and see where things go. But in terms of Colts football, we got lots of fun stuff to talk about tonight.
Yeah, we do. Got a big game coming up, and I guess I have to stop podcasting in the nude. So I know you guys are about that.
Well, I mean, you don't have to, but you definitely have to be very careful about your camera angle, because we don't want to have our videos kicked off YouTube or anything like that. So, I mean,
educational, it won't be kicked off. It'll be fine.
That's right. Strategically located hot pockets that you can
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and now we can pick up, sounds of my wife baking in the background, and maybe even a glimpse of her from time to time. So
she'll be really excited to be included.
She's going to be real thrilled about
make
that.
Her very happy. Yeah. We should probably just, not talk loudly about that in front of her, where she's now aware of the existence of this. But
yeah, she's aware, and she's talking to me like I'm not recording a podcast now.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? All right. Well, we've got the pretty encouraging injury report today, guys. The injury report came out, and it's looking like we're going to have a pretty healthy Colts squad. Only guy that two did not practices. One was Jack Doyle on a rest day, and the other was Mo Alley-Cox. He's got a knee issue, but obviously with Jack Doyle and Trey Burton not, looking like they're at risk to miss the game, that's an encouraging thing. Full practice for everybody else. DeForest Buckner was limited, I guess. Not everybody else. DeForest Buckner was limited. That's a new thing. He tweaked his ankle, maybe, it looks like, on Wednesday or maybe today, I guess. Something definitely to monitor for tomorrow, but nothing as far as what Frank Reich has said that seems like it was a real serious risk for the Colts. So hopefully, no big deal. I guess we'll find out. And so looks pretty good. Looks like we're going to have most of that unit back. Obviously, we played the Texans short a few people, namely, Anthony Costanzo, and that obviously was kind of a big deal in that last game. So he's going to be back, or at least as we can tell, he's going to be back. He was a full participant in this practice, so definitely encouraging there. I mean, this is maybe as healthy as the Colts have been at this stage of the season in a while. Does that seem right to you guys, or am I misremembering? I don't remember a time where we've been entering December and really not had a significant number of serious injuries.
I think this is way off from what we're used to. It seems like we got most of our big time injuries front loaded this season, which I guess is kind of nice. And yeah, I mean, how often have we not been playing with Jack Doyle at this point in the season? Over the past 5 years or so. So
and Ty is usually pretty nicked up by now.
At least banged up. He's still playing, but he's
basically on two functional. I mean, he's like on a partially functional ankle and a peg leg by this point in the season most years. So yeah, really encouraging to see that. I'm glad that we're relatively healthy. Obviously, that can change, but it's very encouraging to be as healthy as a team can be. Obviously, nobody is probably really as healthy as their injury report is saying. These guys are beat up and they're in pain, but for the most part, they are December football healthy, I guess, as much as you can be. So encouraging there, and exciting to be heading toward the playoffs with a relatively healthy squad. So we're going to get in today, guys, to some keys to this game. We're not going to go through the whole scouting report of the Texans. We played them 2 weeks ago. If you don't remember that, you can go back and listen to that podcast. Nothing has really changed, but we're going to talk about some of the things we expect maybe the Colts to do differently, how the Texans may be trying to work things a little differently. We get into all of that. Before we do, I wanted to go ahead and remind you to to definitely take some time and give us a rating, review us on whatever avenue that you listen to the podcast. We definitely appreciate that. That helps build a following, and it helps more people find out about us. We definitely always appreciate you guys leaving those reviews. And in the review, specifically mention Stampede Radio, because obviously we have multiple podcasts on the Stampede Blue Network, and it's nice to hear specific feedback, because then we know that you're talking about us. And yeah, we definitely appreciate it. So call that out, and you definitely really enjoy hearing from you guys. Also follow us on Twitter at Chris Blyzone, at NFL Scheme, and at Jim Campbell 81. We'll throw this stuff up at the bottom of the show as well, where you can keep track of that stuff. But we're not particularly interesting follows, but we do like to engage with you guys. And so, yeah, it's a chance for you guys to interact. We're also probably going to start, if we continue to do these video shows, if they're well received and if they aren't a huge pain, there are some options for some live shows, and we're going to probably start to do some live call-in Q&A shows and things like that. And the best way to know about that stuff is to follow us. So yeah, there you go. That's our plug for that. And then we're going to jump right into it with some of the keys to this game, because there were some things that the Colts did that we probably would like for them to have done differently. This was a closer game than maybe we thought it was going to be. And the Texans are not a bad team by any means, but we should have beat them pretty handily based on how they've played this year versus how we've played this year. And it was not really that kind of a game. So keys to the game, I wanted to jump in on offense, and Shepard, the offense has actually been pretty good recently, but they've really struggled to be consistent. And so what do you think they need to do to become a more consistent offense in this game? How do you think, I mean, not just for this game, but going into the playoffs, we need to start to develop that, being able to play consistently across 60 minutes of football. What do you think are the keys to the Colts offensively to stay kind of in that mentality, stay consistent all the way through this game, and kind of just have a dominant performance over this defense?
Sure. So, I think the biggest thing that we were missing was really the last time we played was Anthony Costanzo, and dealing with that injury, and that was one of those things where we get him back, and if the guys are healthy up front, if the offensive line is good, if they're rolling, if they're playing together and playing well, the rest of the offense is going to work. So for me, I think that's kind of the biggest thing to get going, not only against not only in this game, but against the rest of the teams on the schedule and into the playoffs. If the offensive line's functioning, the offense is going to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we've seen the running game. We talked about in the last podcast, the running game has been better. And a lot of times being able to call a balanced game really makes Frank Reich a better play caller. And I think that getting started early and maybe sticking with the game plan is helpful. But I think, like you said, having Anthony Costanzo back is going to be a big deal. One of the problems that the offense had in the last game, Jim, was that they really struggled to deal with J.J. Watt. I mean, basically we were kept in a tight game by two guys, Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt, and everybody else was just kind of along for the ride on the Texans. And those two guys kind of took over both sides of the ball and really willed their team into the game. Do you think with Anthony Costanzo we're able to deal with Watt better, or do you still think that we should expect for him to be kind of a pain, because he hasn't been the same dominant force, but obviously he was a factor in this last game?
I think he's always going to be kind of a pain. I mean, even a 85% J.J. Watt's still a pretty good football player. So you're going to have to respect that at all times. We're not going to have to throw every big dude on offense we've got on the left side of the line to take care of him, or to at least, hope to mitigate his impact this game, hopefully. Because we know Costanzo has, kept him pretty quiet in the past. JJ's always going to get something. Whether he's going to bat down a pass, especially with, the weird release that Rivers has. I don't know if I remember seeing this many batted down passes in a season. Yeah. Because, lots of people can get the arms up on that dude when he releases, out here somewhere. And so, yeah, dude's always going to disrupt something. But, there's been times, in the amount of times that we've seen him go against the Colts, since he's come into the league. And I can only think a handful of times really where like he took the game over. There's a couple times where like he made a play, the play, a strip sack or what have you that, maybe turned the tide of the game. But I think Costanzo in particular, and this line as of late, is going to do a good enough job. Like I said, I'm always going to expect him to do something because he's still a really good football player, regardless. Dude just knows how to play football. So I think, he's going to be a pain in our butt. As long as he's in the league and in our division, he's probably going to be a pain in our butt. But I think with Costanzo back and looking like he's, doing pretty well, came out of last week fine. So far no indication of any issue going forward. So if we've got a fully healthy line, I feel really confident this offense is going to, be able to put a game together because there's not much else behind J.J. Watt.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too, Shepard, because they probably didn't pay real close attention to it, but they probably rolled Jack Doyle and any tight end that was in on the play over to Chaz Green to aid him as often as they possibly could, which left Braden Smith one-on-one without anybody really chipping J.J. Watt. They won't have to do that if Anthony Costanzo is back in this game. So Braden Smith's not on an island on that side. You can, move your help where you need to. If he's your guy who's the most disruptive pass rusher, then you can kind of mitigate that with blocks from the tight end or in the running. They can pick that blitz up, and you're not leaving your tackle on an island against J.J. Watt now because you've got two guys who can kind of handle their business on their own for the most part.
Right. Yeah. So in the first game, I thought the Colts did a good job of chipping Watt, but mostly they left Braden Smith alone, and Braden Smith shut J.J. Watt down. That's one thing I don't know that we've really talked about here, but the season that Braden Smith's having, he's going to get re-signed, and he's going to have a really nice contract as a right tackle. Chris Ballard, he did great, but he screwed up drafting all those guys in 2018 because they're all going to be due at the same time, and those guys are paid. And Braden Smith he's a very good right tackle. He shut J.J. Watt down. Anytime Watt moved over to take on whoever was on the left side,
the rotating door.
Yeah, the traffic cone we put over there. The Colts did a good job of giving him chips and kind of making him work for it. But at the end of the day, like you said, you might still have somebody put a hand on him or back chip him as he releases out of the backfield or something like that. But with Costanzo back, you're not going to have to worry about it. Obviously you want to plan for it. You want to know where J.J. Watt is. But you don't have to dedicate the same amount of resources to blocking him with a healthy Anthony Costanzo. And that's huge. It's huge for this game, and it'll be huge when we have to try to block the other Watt too.
Well, I think if Chaz Green had to play on that left side, they almost would have been better off putting Quentin Nelson in. Michael Scott in the office shows up in his paper mache costume where he's got another head on his shoulder. Just put Anthony Costanzo's paper mache head on Quentin Nelson's shoulder. There's no need to send Chaz Green out there because I assume they're basically the same thing. It might actually be more effective.
I would have went with Prison Mike. Personally, I think that he's pretty hard. I think you could have put Prison Mike out there and it would have been better.
That's true. He's seen some things.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then the other thing that we really need to focus on, that the Colts really need to improve on, and they need to improve on third down conversions. This was their second worst game in third down conversion percentage, 27%. Only the Ravens game was worse at 17%. They also had a 27% conversion rate against the Vikings as well. But not great on third down conversions. They moved the ball really well on early downs, but if they would have a penalty, if they got a sack or anything, if anything that stopped them, basically completely disrupted the flow of their offense, and they really struggled to convert on those third downs. By comparison, the Texans did relatively well on third down conversions, and so that's really an area that they're going to have to improve. I don't know the reasons were varied for why they were. A lot of times it was somebody like J.J. Watt getting in and impacting the play, but really it's going to mean not getting behind on downs where they're getting 4 or 5 yards every time that they're running a play. They're keeping ahead of the count and everything. But if they are consistently putting themselves in third down situations and not converting or converting at that rate, it's going to be a long game. Deshaun Watson is definitely good enough to score. They're going to have to put up points unless the defense is going to come out really fast, which they have not proven that they can do in the first half. Just being honest, they really haven't shown that they can lock down a team for 60 minutes. So, yeah, I don't know. And then there's the whole factor, and we didn't talk about this. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get over to the defensive side. But Deshaun Watson, we don't know what his availability is going to be like, and we'll get more into some of the COVID-related stuff with him here when we jump over the defense. But I'm not really sure the issue with their third down conversions, but it's been worse this year than it was in previous years, specifically for sure in 2018. It's not been terrible, but this was definitely one of their worst games. It could have just been that the Texans know them really well. Their conversions were pretty low against several of the divisional teams. So it's probably, and if I have to just take a shot in the dark, I would guess that's part of it. It's just that familiarity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's part of the reason why you look around the league and you see a bad team playing a good team, but then you realize they're in the same division, and normally you would assume that two teams that had such discrepancies as far as the quality of the team, coaching, roster makeup, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, those two teams are going to be really close. And it's just because they play each other twice a year. Chris Ballard is never going to admit to building a team to beat the Titans, to beat the Texans, to beat the Jaguars. But the bottom line is you play those guys more than you play anybody else. If you're not building a team to beat the teams in your division, if you're not building a team to win your division, you're not doing a good job. So, you build a team to win your division. You spend the most time preparing, you spend the most time planning. At this point, those teams have a pretty good idea of what Frank Reich likes to do on third down, which, I mean, it's not to say that he's predictable. He's not, but the types of things Frank Reich likes to do as far as, using picks, using rubs, getting guys open in creative ways. A team like the Titans, a team like the Texans, the Jags, they're going to have a better feel for what the Colts are looking to do there than a lot of other teams. So in my opinion, yeah, that's probably why, third down conversions are lower against division teams. It's also a good reason why this game was closer than what a lot of people thought. I actually thought that I thought it was going to be closer than 6 points. I thought we were looking at a 2 or 3 point game last week, not because I thought the Colts were bad, but it's Deshaun Watson and the Texans. So, an in-division game, unless you have a truly historically bad team in your division like the Jets this year, you kind of got to expect the game's going to be pretty close. And I think that this one won't be as close as the last one was, but it's still going to be closer for most of the game, I think, than what most Colts fans are going to enjoy. But it's just kind of part of it. You're playing a team in the division.
Definitely.
Well, and the division's the easiest way to the playoffs.
Right.
You win the division, you got a playoff spot. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many not great teams have gotten into the playoffs because they won their division and then were able to actually make a run, maybe even make it to the Super Bowl?
The 7-9 Giants beat the undefeated Patriots after squeaking into the playoffs, and I mean, got hot at the right time, made it in, and got a little rowdy, and it's hard telling. I mean, you got a team like the Redskins. It's not the Redskins, the Washington football team, who has been a little bit on fire lately, and they could kind of get crazy and get in there and do some damage. There's not anybody in the NFC that I would say they couldn't possibly beat that's been so unbeatable. The Packers probably would be the only exception to that, but you never know. Yeah. It gets playoff football gets wild.
So at this point.
Blystone, I'm pretty sure you just got us canceled in our first video episode.
Mm-hmm. Well done.
For using that term instead of Washington football team. So way to go. You started us and ended us all in the same.
It was over before it started.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we get back, we're going to jump into talking about the defensive side of those defensive keys. But we'll be right back. All right, so we're going to actually look at a little bit of film here. If you are on the audio, I promise we're going to try not to make this super intensive where you're going to be bored out of your mind. But we're going to talk about some of the reasons why as we talked about, Deshaun Watson was a big factor in this game. And one of the reasons why was because he consistently made big plays. They had, I think, almost all of their big plays where he basically evaded pressure and made a play downfield. And so what I wanted to look at this play here. This is, I think, the longest play of the game for the Texans. And it's pretty ridiculous because basically it's just Deshaun Watson refusing to be taken down. This is a pretty good blitz. You got Darius Leonard and Kenny Moore both blitzing. Darius Leonard gets a hand on him. He basically steps forward and just misses getting taken down. And then he's got a guy open downfield that really should have been able to be covered, but with that kind of time and being evaded like this just makes for a really difficult coverage assignment for the Colts. But so he throws this deep ball and you get pretty good blitz, especially, I mean, I don't know if you guys felt this way, but I felt like Eberflus blitzed more in this game really than we've seen him do all season. And got kind of creative with it. He stunts and blitzes at the same time in this particular one. And you got a few looks from him that you just really didn't get frequently otherwise. And they didn't get home. And that was really the difference, was not getting home. You get guys getting swallowed. Kenny Moore gets swallowed up by the guard, and it's Darius Leonard is home free. He has hands on Deshaun Watson, and it just felt like that all game long, where Deshaun Watson is just getting free, where honestly we think he probably is going down, and he doesn't. He refuses to do that. What do you think? In terms of how do you improve on this? I mean, he basically kind of did this on his own. The Colts, I think, probably had a pretty good plan. They did get good pressure, but they just didn't finish the job.
They still got 5 sacks on him, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, they still took him down 5 times. They probably should have taken him down at 8, at least.
So on that play specifically, if you notice, the Colts sent pressure. And normally, when you send pressure, you're going to have either guys drop back into coverage so that they can drop in and have a full zone. That would be like a zone blitz. That's when you see a defensive lineman kind of drop out and drop back into coverage. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to see the defensive backs and the linebackers go into man coverage. The Colts did neither one of those things. The Colts are very much, if you notice, the bottom part of the screen, there are 1, 2, 3 receiving options. There are only 2 defenders there to cover them. The Colts are in a zone. They're in a zone, very undermatched in the back end. The reason they're comfortable doing that is because they believe they're going to get home. And if they don't get home, they're screwed. They are very, very screwed because they're in zone and they don't have enough defenders back to cover everything.
Yeah, so Julian Blackmon is not in a good spot there.
Right. He's in an impossible situation. So it's a high risk, high reward defensive play. And I can't help but feel like that maybe they don't necessarily do those types of things if it's not a team they feel like that they could win. I'm not saying that they would never run those against a better opponent. They probably will, and they probably have. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't time that right, if your guys don't get home, if the offense runs a play that you don't necessarily expect, you're going to give up those big plays. So that's on play calling right there, and it is on execution too.
Yeah, there was a little bit of maybe over pursuit from Leonard on that play too.
Well, and really, it's tough because Deshaun Watson steps up just a small amount,
and throws him off.
He doesn't have a direct angle anymore, and so that's what a really good quarterback with. I mean, how many times do we see Andrew Luck do that, where he kind of glances off of him because they just know how to kind of angle their body. They get themselves in a right position. And here is kind of the same. I mean, this one is really just, he doesn't get there in time, but this is DeForest Buckner getting hands on him. And he's there, he's close. But He doesn't get home quite in time to impact. I mean, sure, could it impact the throw? Yes, those pressures and how many we've said before and many times that you have to impact, like pressure impacts the play as well. But you got a really good quarterback with Deshaun Watson, and he plays well in pressure. So this was a good throw. A good throw and a good catch that we're showing here, guys. I apologize. I'm trying really hard not to be talking about the clip too much for you audio listeners, but we're playing, this play where he throws over the middle and Julian Blackmon blows up the receiver, and it's a really fantastic hit. And I mean, honestly, it's just a really good play by the receiver. Deshaun Watson makes a good play. The Texans receiver, I think it's Brandon Cooks at that point, makes a good play. It's really just solid play all around. The Colts. Yeah. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do in those situations where you can necessarily say the Colts screwed up. Some of that's just going to happen when you have a really excellent quarterback.
Yeah, and for the people listening, it was really just a play where Deshaun Watson dropped it in between two defenders, over the deep middle. Could Anthony Walker have played the ball a little bit better? Yeah, probably. But realistically, not all 11 guys on defense are going to be all pros. And when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson who can just drop a ball in, sometimes it's just going to happen, and you can't really. Yeah. There's just not much you can do.
Yeah, and with this one, you get a guy who can scramble. It just makes things really hard. I mean, anytime that he can move and get outside of, I mean, you think you've got somebody. He's dead to rights so many times in this game. Colts just can't close in and finish off the play, and that just happens. It just does. So they got to find a way to. I don't know. I wonder if things even out a little bit. Honestly, maybe you guys do you think? My takeaway watching some of these clips, and these were really the most remarkable ones. The things that really were frustrating is that most of these took place on third down. I think all three of these were third down conversions. They were long plays. That's what's maybe really frustrating is that you are looking at Deshaun Watson getting them out of bad situations, making some of their biggest plays of the game on third down conversions, and those are backbreakers because the defense has got him in a really bad spot, and he just kind of bails them out like a cheat code. So my question is, do you think that the Colts take the same kinds of risks knowing that they were close, or do you think that they back off, play a little safer, and say, hey, they couldn't really deal with us in our regular defensive coverages and our safer coverages? They couldn't be consistently moving the ball down the field. We don't need to send pressure at them like we did in this first game. Let's get home with our 4 and not worry about it as much. I'm just, what do you guys think in terms of what's the most likely option for the defense?
So I feel like they've got 2 games left before the playoffs start that they can really afford to take chances and to do some of those things and to be aggressive in in spots where maybe they wouldn't. They wouldn't against a better opponent. So for me, I feel like even if they feel like they can get home with 4, this is kind of your tune-up between this and the Jags, and you might let the Jags win if the playoffs are locked up and there's a chance they could get Trevor Lawrence. I'm throwing it out there. It's a real thing. Seriously, if your option is, hey, let's lose a meaningless game or let the
rest our starters and let the Jaguars not get the guy they want.
Yeah, or the guy that could literally change their franchise, the guy who a lot of people think is going to have the type of impact that a Patrick Mahomes or a Peyton Manning could have. No, forget that. Lose that game. But
that might actually be enjoyable to watch them try to lose
to
our second and third string.
It could be a terribly awful
work
game.
At it.
Yeah, and awesome at the same time. But really, we've got 2 games to kind of workshop this and to kind of tune up for the playoffs. And even if you feel like that you can beat the Texans no matter what you do on defense, even if you feel like you can get home with 4, I think you be aggressive. I think you try things. I think at this point, you kind of know who you are. But at the same time, if there's something you want to work out and you want to try, a certain blitz, if you get a certain look, this is the time to do it. So even if they give up a couple big plays, it's Deshaun Watson. You're probably going to give up a couple big plays no matter what you do. And in that one play where you saw him scramble around, and then the Colts defense reacts to that because they have to. Deshaun Watson still finds a way to complete a pass downfield. So the Colts were in a more base defense there. I don't remember what it was now, but they were in a more base defense. They were in zone. They were dropped back. So it doesn't really matter what you do. Deshaun Watson's going to find a way to exploit it eventually if you don't get home. So for me, I say be aggressive, keep blitzing, keep sending those things, keep hitting him, and keep working those things out and get tuned up and get right for the playoffs.
Yeah, so try to wrap him up. Just focus on it.
Yeah.
I don't think now is necessarily a time like I said for reservation. If he's eating your lunch on it, yeah, maybe make adjustments, figure something else out. But
so devil's advocate. Devil's advocate here. Are you concerned at all about showing your hand a little bit before the playoffs in a game that really doesn't matter that much, that you might be able to win without that kind of play? Like if you're going to have to go up against Baker Mayfield playing as well as he's played, I mean, he could play really badly and get washed out. If you're going to have to go up against Lamar Jackson, if you're going to have to go up against Josh Allen, if you have to go up against one of these guys in a really tough playoff game, do you want to show your hand on some of these exotic blitzes that maybe you could implement, or does that matter? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you'd rather have to practice in a real game and get more comfortable with those. I don't know what's more valuable, I guess.
So if this were, a traditional 3-4 kind of Ravens style defense or Jets or, where you've got a lot of exotic zone blitzes, I say Jets. I don't mean Jets this year. I mean the Jets under Rex Ryan. When you have a lot of those exotic looks, yeah, that could be a thing. You're going to be able to throw unscouted looks at teams. If teams in the playoffs are confused by absolutely anything the Colts defense does, they have no business being in the playoffs. The Colts defense is very simple. Even the more quote unquote exotic things we throw at them, like the zone coverage with the heavy pressure up front, that's not really exotic. A quarterback is going to be able to look at that and know exactly what's happening. The point of the defense isn't to confuse, it's to overwhelm. So for me personally, I don't feel like that we have much to hide, because there isn't much to hide. It's really getting right and more about execution. The defense really is about execution. It's about speed. It's less about confusion and not putting things on tape. You can still do some of those things for sure, but it's a simple defense, and that's not a concern that I would have with the defense.
Well, and what's interesting to me, and the way you describe that, reminds me, and you guys have probably read it, I don't remember how long or where it even was posted, but there was a really great article where Howard Mudd was talking about Peyton Manning's favorite plays. Does this ring a bell to you guys? It was a really good article, interesting interview. But he's talking about the fact that they could go up to the line and tell the defense what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter because they're going to out execute you. They just are. It doesn't matter whether you know it. They're not going to be tricky. Right. They're just going to do it better than you can defend it. And so if it's kind of an interesting, shift to see that on the defensive side, something that works so effectively for the Colts offense for so many years. So, well, one of the things that the Colts have been doing, Jim, is they have been taking the ball away with consistency. They've got 22 takeaways. They had 2 in this first matchup. They had a fumble recovery and an interception. Neither resulted in points. And so that's maybe not a great thing, but that's a big factor for them because they get these slow starts. They're up against, they've given up more points in the first half to teams, but they've consistently taken the ball away. Many times this season, we've seen them be able to keep themselves in the game because of this. Do you think that they managed to continue that in this game? Do you think that we don't think that's a fluke. They've done it all season long, but Deshaun Watson had gone for a while without throwing a pick until he came into this game.
Well, and fun stat, Kenny Moore has broke both of his streaks.
Yeah.
So the last 2 seasons, I think it was, he's had coming into a Colts game streaks of over 200 passes without interception, and Kenny Moore has broke both of them.
Nice. I see that you watched the awful Good Morning Football interview with Kenny
It was
Moore.
a terrible interview,
Kenny
but that was
Moore,
a good stat.
Kenny Moore is a fantastic cornerback. He is not a good interview. Oh my gosh, that was
that was rough.
It was dry. It was
the couple seconds of silence after every one of his answers was pretty painful.
It was like they were interviewing Bill Belichick, except for that he was smiling. Like that was the only difference. There was no less uncomfortable silence.
He was totally happy to be there. He just didn't have much to say to him.
Just not going to give them anything. I enjoyed it, but it was still very uncomfortable. It was like the cringiest moments from like Dinner Party at the Office. Another Office reference here in one episode, but it was just an uncomfortable, like, please, Kenny, give them something. They're desperate to fill airtime here.
Yeah, they really need a sound bite out of you, please.
So if you want to be uncomfortable, go watch that interview. Yeah, that was a great nugget, though, that he was kind of the streak breaker for Deshaun Watson in terms of picks. Yeah. And so then the question is that just because they've studied this team, they know this team really well, and so they're opportunistic about those things, and so we can expect them to get takeaways, or is there just no way to really have any real idea? I mean, Kenny Moore obviously had a really big game against them, so that could be a factor.
Well, and he even, I think, mentioned in that same interview that they know what their tendencies are. Yeah. And he read the play and he was able to go and get that pick. And going back to the not getting points off of both of these turnovers, I remember last week after his spectacular interception and thinking they're about to not turn this into points again. How many times can Kenny Moore hand you the ball and say, go get points? And we're right here again. And then, fortunately, a foul kept us rolling.
If Kenny Moore would just return some for touchdowns, he wouldn't have to worry about it. So, really, this is on Kenny Moore. He needs to do more for the team.
And I will say this was on Kenny Moore that he had to catch that interception in the end zone.
Right.
Yeah.
If the Colts put out a great video today, I don't know if you've seen it, about his interception. I think the title is just "Go Catch It," "Go Up and Catch It" or something like that. Or go get it. And he was talking about how like he was so angry and frustrated because of his previous couple plays that was purely like he went into just pure rage mode, blacked out, came up with that catch. But he's and that's why he threw the ball instead of going out for the celebration. He's like, I was so frustrated and yet so relieved I didn't know what to do, so I just threw the ball. And
that's what I do.
And hopefully somebody found it for him because he's going to want to keep that ball because that picture, if he becomes a Hall of Fame corner, that picture is the one that's going to be showing at the Hall of Fame. That image and that ball is going to be the one displayed.
Well, it's why I had texted somebody when it looked like our drive was about to sputter out last week, and I was like, this dude just made a career-defining play, and you're going to not even get us 3 points. Are you kidding me? Yeah. But this is what I'm used to at this point. But no, I think we'll see more takeaways. I think what are we in as far as takeaways defensively? Are we third? Okay. Third. Yeah,
I think it's the Steelers in second, and I believe the Dolphins are number one. I think it's like 25 and 26, respectively, and we got 22. So we're right up there. It's far better than we've been in many years in the past. And it's an emphasis point Ballard has talked about over the past two off seasons, specifically scoring points off of those is the big emphasis, that we're turning those into points. They want to average 3 points on average for every turnover. So I don't know what they're at this season, but they definitely have improved in terms of the number of turnovers. They've just now got to start turning those consistently into points, and that's going to make a difference in the playoffs if they can consistently do that. That's how a team that maybe isn't as good as a team like the Chiefs, on one side of the ball doesn't have the firepower really to keep up with a team like that. That's how you make the difference, is if you can start taking the ball away and getting points off it. That really, kind of keeps you in some of those games that otherwise you might not be. So I think that definitely could be a factor. One of the things that is been really frustrating watching is watching these slow starts for the defense, and how do we get out of that? I think this would be a really good game to get out of this kind of I don't know. It's not that they've played badly. If you look at the play, it's not bad. But man, there is a clear difference between the first half and the second half in terms of they're not getting beat on the same looks twice. Things are not getting left open to them more than once. They're taking advantage of those opportunities. So I don't know. I don't know how you change that. I don't know what you can do, but going into the playoffs, it'd be good to start this trend of just playing a full 60 minutes of the kind of defense that they're playing in the second half with some consistency. And this would be a great game to start.
Yeah, it would be a great game to start.
I don't have any advice on how to do that, but
me neither. They just
wanted to point out that they should do it. I mean, I'm sure
do your job better.
Really need to hear that. Just be better at football.
Just be
guys.
better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really all I had. So, I mean, I don't have any more advice for you guys. Just be better at football.
Yeah, that's
like right out of the gate.
Advice.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
rock solid.
We're going to jump right in, guys, to our bold predictions, and these are going to be more significant this time because we're now like in the hole. I think Jim hit the first time we've ever hit on any of these bold predictions this season.
I mean, we had some soft hits.
Yeah. I mean, but Jim like crushed his.
Yeah.
So we really we're playing catch up here. So we gotta come with some good bold predictions for this game. So Jim, because you hit yours, you get to lead us off here with your bold prediction. So what's your bold prediction for this game? What can we expect to happen? Please don't make it dark and sad, because since you hit on one, it's going to make me really depressed if you're like, my bold prediction is that we lose this game and get knocked out of the playoffs.
No, it's not. How about let's go something oddly specific.
That is your way. Ben Banigou is not
on
the inactive list.
Ben Banigou plays. That's the bold prediction.
The bold prediction.
Yeah.
Ben Banigou has 5 snaps. How about T.Y. Hilton, 7 catches, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns.
All right. I mean, that is pretty close to his stat line from this past game, although I think he only had 5 catches and managed to get 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
I guess it's not bold. All right.
It's the Texans.
So
that's
the Texans. So let's go 130.
Okay.
130.
I'm better.
130.
That's a good game. That's a good game for T.Y. That would be his best game of the season. By far.
I was thinking for some reason he was like right at 100 last time. But anyway, never mind.
89.
Yeah, he's had this past game was 111. He was at he was, I don't know what he was against the Texans, or maybe I don't know. He's had several games that have been in like the 90 to 110-ish range over the past 3 or 4 weeks. So that would be his best game of the season, and it would definitely be great to have him. I mean, I think he could start making a case for another contract with that kind of a game. I mean, he's building up to the point where I think that would put, if he had 2 touchdowns, that would put him at, I think, 7. Does he have 5 touchdowns? I feel like he does. I think that'd put him at 7 touchdowns. Hey, if I had a computer, I could check these things.
Hey, the internet is your friend.
Sometimes, yeah.
Hey, you guys heard? There's so it's a new website. I just found it. It's called Google's. If you go to Google's, I think it's Google's.com. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Googles. Yeah, it would be 6 touchdowns, by the way, not 7. So, that'd be a great bold prediction. I would be excited if that happened. And I'm not going to fight you on it. I think that's probably reasonable. Anytime that you take T.Y. Hilton as your bold prediction and against the Texans, it's probably a pretty solid chance you're going to at least be in the running for that. What do you think, Shepard? What's yours?
Oh, I probably should have put more thought into this.
This is why we don't win bold predictions right here, because
I know it's not great. So I'm going to go defense, and I'm going to go Grover Stewart.
Grover failed me the last time I made a bold prediction about Grover, so trade carefully.
Well, this is going to be
a fickle defensive lineman. He's not interested in your bold predictions,
right? And that's the thing. Like I'm not I don't care if I get it right. I just want to see it happen. I want to see Grove get 2 sacks today, and that's a bold prediction because Grover's not a pass rusher, but I feel like it could happen. I feel like this is the week. The Texans gave up a ton of pressure last time out, and I feel like Grover could go out and get healthy and get a couple sacks.
He was absolutely all over Derek Carr. I mean, he was very close. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel bad about my prediction because I predicted the same 2 sacks for Grover against the Raiders, and he was close. I mean, he was really close. Did he have a sack that got called back for a penalty? I think
so. Yeah,
I feel like he did. At least one. He still wouldn't have hit on my prediction, but he was in the neighborhood a lot, and that was encouraging because he's getting consistent pressure. And yeah, it was. I think that's probably a solid one as well. Especially given what DeForest Buckner did to them in the last game, I would assume they're probably going to be paying a lot of attention to him, and that means it's Grover Stewart time. So, and Danico Autry is, he's, I don't know. He and Justin Houston have, both been kind of a factor. Houston had a really good game as well. If you had to deal with those guys, it feels like you're going to leave Danico Autry and Grover Stewart, the ones who are in single cover or single protection. And so you have an opportunity for them to make a big impact. So I could definitely see it. So my bold prediction is that we've seen Jonathan Taylor look really good. And because of the way that Frank Reich does things, my bold prediction is that it's going to be Nyheim Hines just sealing the show in this game, because this seems like the way things are going. How many times has Nyheim Hines had a breakout game, and then you think, man, Nyheim Hines is going to go on a run, and then he gets like 3 snaps the next game on offense, and he just doesn't really do anything, and they're doing something completely different. So I wonder if what they're going to see is more Nyheim Hines in this game, if he's going to be involved in the passing game, not as much in the running game necessarily. I still think we'll see Jonathan Taylor, but I wonder if this is going to be a big Nyheim Hines game. And I'm going to make it really bold. So I'm going to say Nyheim Hines has a receiving touchdown. I'm not going to go yards, but I am going to say he not only has a receiving touchdown, he's going to run a punt back for a touchdown.
Okay.
He hasn't done that this season, but he has looked like he could be really close. And probably if I was smart, Rodgers running a kickback, because he's looked like he was pretty close a couple times as well. But I'm going to go Nyheim Hines to get a couple of touchdowns, one on special teams. I just think it feels like a Nyheim Hines kind of week, and Jonathan Taylor's, I think he'll do fine. I don't think that's going to necessarily be a knock or anything there, but I do think that it's often you can see them trying to, get Nyheim Hines in there just to screw fantasy owners. So yeah, I could see that happening. All right. Okay. So going from our bold predictions here, I wanted to talk really briefly about this season, because we've got a lot of different opinions, as always, with Colts fans. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what you guys would need to see from this team over the remainder of the season to consider this a successful season in your eyes, based on what they spent, based on going and getting DeForest Buckner, based on signing Phillip Rivers and the expectations that were there, how well this defense has played, and really the offensive weapons, all and encompassing all of it. Jim, what does this Colts team need to do over the remaining weeks and into the playoffs for you to feel like this was a successful season?
Well, for the rest of the season, I think I think at least if they win 2 out of the next 3 games, then we're looking pretty good on that. And I think a playoff win alone, we can call this a pretty good success for as messed up as this season was, or still is with the pandemic and stuff like that. I feel pretty confident that if we had a normal off season, we don't drop that game to the Jags in the opener. Things are a bit more well, but then again, it's the Jags in Florida, and for some reason, we drop those games every time we play them. But I feel like had the team had normal time, those first couple of losses maybe might not have existed, because we might have had a cohesive team. Maybe some of the injuries don't pop up, that they did, or they would have happened in camp and we would have been prepared instead of them happening, the first couple weeks of the season. Yeah. And so, I think, if we finish with 11 wins and somehow don't get to the playoffs, I'm going to still chalk it up as a pretty good year. That's just unfortunate. And the circumstances, like that second game with the Titans, really, really chaps me just because we didn't have the ability to put our best team on the field at that time. And it wasn't because of a football related injury that decimated our defense, and stuff like that. So,
you could look at it like that, or you could look at it as it took a global pandemic for the Titans to get a win against the Colts. However you want to frame it.
Yeah. I mean,
I choose to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. But so I think, if we walk out somehow with 10 or 11 wins and we didn't make the playoffs, that sucks. But we strung together 10 or 11 wins in a pretty crazy year, with a really old quarterback at the back end of his career, who came out and actually played pretty well, because somebody gave him an offensive line finally that can keep him upright. And we saw our defense just become diabolical in some cases this season, with the takeaways and things like that. And I think overall I'm already very happy with this season. Compared to what we went through last year.
Yeah.
This has been a pretty good swing to be, and a pretty good time to be a Colts fan. And I think the arrow is only pointing up for this team.
Yeah. What about you, Shepard?
So, I mean, if the Colts didn't win another game this year, that'd be pretty disappointing. And it certainly wouldn't end things on a positive note. But at the same time, it would be tough for me to say that the season as a whole wasn't a success. Last year we were 7-9. Things started off really well, and then they fell apart over the back half of the year. And then this year, if it did fall apart like that, we started off kind of rocky. The team got really hot. There were huge improvements on offense, huge improvements on defense, and then whatever happened, over the last three happened. I don't think that happens. I think much more likely is that they win 11 games. I think maybe, if we drop one unexpectedly, maybe a 10-win season. So you're, at worst 3 wins better than you were last year, with like Jim said, a quarterback who's over the hill. Yeah, you made some improvements on defense, bringing in DeForest Buckner and doing some of those things. But really, we saw everything you could want to see from a team at different points in the season. I feel like that, there was definite improvement across the board. A lot of good young pieces to build on, a lot of guys, a lot of talent that's going to come back next year and hopefully continue to improve and develop. Still some question marks, but all in all, I feel like this season's already been a success. My bar's probably a little bit lower because I'm not as reactionary as what I feel like a lot of Colts fans on the internet are. If the Colts can get a win in the playoffs, I feel like the general Colts population online is going to be happy. But for me, I feel like it's already been a success.
I think I definitely have to agree with that to an extent because, I mean, the idea of football in general is to be entertaining and fun. And last year's team wasn't fun. Last year's team was just kind of a slog. And if you're a casual fan, you could just tune out and be like, I'll catch you guys next year. But if you're somebody who follows it closely and writes about it, you don't really have a choice. You're going to watch it and you're going to watch every minute of it. It's rough. And it just wasn't a fun season to watch. There wasn't even the games that the Colts won. It wasn't nearly as fun as some of the games the Colts have lost this season. I mean, there have been high moments in this season that have just been entertaining and enjoyable. Phillip Rivers has been a good addition. I think, like you said, I agree with that to a degree that in many ways it's already been a success just because it's more entertaining. It's more fun.
Right.
Having said that, I would be pretty disappointed. I mean, obviously at this point it's not a lock, but I would be it'd be devastating if the Colts did not make the playoffs at this point. That I think would undercut a lot of the good feelings that I have about this season, because it would mean that they basically had the bottom drop out at the end. There's really no reason that they should not make the playoffs at this point. Now, what they do beyond that point, who knows? They're a team that I feel like has the potential to beat almost anybody in the AFC if they're on, and could probably lose to almost anybody in the AFC if they're not. So I think, to me, Jim, I agree. I think a playoff win would be nice. I'll be honest. I'll be personally pretty disappointed if they do not make an AFC championship appearance. And call me, I mean, like, this is the point of the season. You guys will know this about me. I'm aware of this thing about myself. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. I'm the guy who, as a kid, I grew up, watching IU basketball, and IU won my NCAA bracket every year because I couldn't help myself, but just, it didn't really matter how good they actually were through the season. I just kind of had to fill them all the way in, because it just felt wrong not to. So I get to playoff football and I start to feel that taking over. I recognize it's not a rational thought process, so I'm going to have to check myself a little bit at the door from here on out. But I'll be a little disappointed if they don't get at least a playoff win. And depending upon the way that the teams break down from there, I feel like, a playoff win would be a major success for this season, considering where we were 2 years ago, and to where we are now. I think that on the whole, you have to feel pretty good about things. And really, if you're looking at things in terms of where this franchise is as a whole and the direction that the franchise is in, you've got to feel great about Chris Ballard and about the job that he's done with this team. You got to feel great about the fact that you've got a ton of cap space and you've got a lot of quarterback options that are going to be available. Now you're going to have to sign, like we talked about earlier, all those offensive linemen and defensive players that, unfortunately, when you draft all these great players in one draft, the problem comes up, you got to re-sign those guys. But you'd have a really hard time looking at this season pessimistically. I think there's been a lot to be excited about as a Colts fan. So, yeah. So last thing, kind of in the spirit of Christmas gifts here, we're going to talk about our Christmas wish lists. And I threw this up as a question on Twitter, and it was more divided maybe than I thought that it was going to be. It was very interesting. But so I'm going to, throw it to you guys and get your opinions. But if you had the ability to add a Colts player to the current roster from the last 20 years of Colts football, and those players cannot be Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck, but if you could add any other Colts player over the last 20 years to the current roster, and it could be at the peak of their career. We're not gonna restrict you to but any Colts player at the peak of their career from the last 20 years to this current roster, who are you adding and why? Shepard?
Dwight Freeney, not even close.
Yep, and that's what Jim wanted too.
Yeah, sorry, I mean that's because that's the correct answer. I don't.
Well, I'm left with only one option. Then it's Donald Brown.
Well, naturally, that's actually not one that I got.
I'm on video now. I have to keep a straight face. Does he mean that? But then I was like, oh, okay, he's joking. That was a joke.
Yeah, I got a lot of weird answers to that, and Donald Brown was not one of them. Yeah, that was not one. I did get Joe. Take the. I also I don't understand. I mean,
no, why? There was moments.
Yeah, but I just didn't understand some of the. So the most common one that I got. I don't know if you guys saw this at all. Checked in. I don't even know if it's gotten more interesting answers. I muted it eventually because it was just kind of going bonkers, and it was like I don't need to see this anymore because it was mostly the same. The most common one that I got actually was not Dwight Freeney. It was Bob Sanders, which I was surprised by because Bob Sanders was hurt all the time, and also Bob Sanders plays safety, and we have two pretty good safeties, so that doesn't really upgrade your defense in a significant way. There were two players in my mind. There was only two. The most obvious and the one that I agree with, I think, is Dwight Freeney. I think he makes this defense just unbearable. I can't imagine him. He never played with interior defensive linemen as talented as we have here.
If you have it would literally be
putting him across Justin Houston, Justin Houston is then the worst defensive lineman on your line.
It's really good.
Dwight Freeney would have just made people miserable. It would be, I don't think some of the people who were questioning it, I don't think remember what Dwight Freeney looked like in his prime. I just think we don't remember.
So Jonathan Ogden, first ballot Hall of Fame left tackle. Go back and watch Dwight Freeney against Jonathan Ogden. He destroyed him. Jonathan Ogden was confused. He could not block him. Jonathan Ogden was he was potentially the best left tackle of his generation, and he could not block Dwight Freeney if his life depended on it. I'll stop, but the correct answer is Dwight Freeney. I don't know what to tell you.
So there was only one other player that I even considered. I don't think it's the right answer. But there's only one other player, and that's Marvin Harrison.
Okay.
That I would only, but I was also gonna. Robert Mathis was gonna be my
for this team.
Yeah, for this team.
I think that probably helps you a lot because they do lack a pass rusher. But I was thinking in terms of playing in the era that we play in now. How many yards would he have had? How many touchdowns would he have had if he started his career with passing rules that exist now? He was so good, and he would make that offense so much more dynamic. So that to me, that was the only other one that I would even consider. Was Marvin Harrison. I think the obvious answer is Dwight Freeney, and Robert Mathis would have also been an excellent one. People were trying to say Robert Mathis more than Freeney because he was got more sack fumbles.
That's because you had a lot of people who were in their early 20s answering the question.
Yeah, I think that it was just a lot of people who just don't remember.
And also, he spent a lot of time in our division going up against a lot of really crappy teams.
Yeah, well, Dwight Freeney did
crappy quarterbacks. Yeah,
but like he also got to play across from Dwight Freeney, and that certainly helped. Those numbers.
Freeney was just different in a primetime game. I still remember. I was pretty young, but I still remember being like, "Oh, it's a Monday night game. Freeney's definitely going to have a big game because he just did." And every time it happened, Dwight Freeney was just different. Robert Mathis was a great Colt. I love Robert Mathis, but at the end of the day, Dwight Freeney was a much more talented player. And if we're talking players at their peaks for what they can do for this team, the right answer is 93. Come on.
Yeah. It'd be really hard to disagree with you on that. I just think that's, I don't know. Unless you said Marvin Harrison, I don't think I could even really listen. I liked everybody's comments. Everybody had like, okay, yeah, whatever. Thanks for sharing your opinion. Many of them were wrong. I try to remember some of the other weird. Reggie Wayne came up a lot, and I was like, man, I love Reggie. He's one of my favorite Colts, but that doesn't make him one of the Colts. Yeah. Like he's not Marvin. He would sure. I mean, prime Reggie would be great, but like he was never the best receiver in the NFL, and maybe Marvin wasn't specifically like he was consistently like the top two though. Like he might not have been because there were some crazy good receivers, but he was always in like the conversation.
It just depends on how you gauge it. If you're looking at most physically gifted, Randy Moss had everybody beat probably of all time. If you're talking about pure receiver skill, it'd be tough to beat Marv. But again, that's a different debate for a different day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, regardless, if we had a Christmas wish, either of those, I mean, specifically, if you had Dwight Freeney to this team, oh man, I don't know. I don't think they'd have problems with slow starts on defense anymore.
No, they wouldn't have problems. The opposing offense would just put in their backups halfway through the second quarter. It would be insane.
It'd be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get out of here. But you can check out some cool Colts content over here. We got a nice little scrolling banner on the bottom. You can check out Colts content at StampedeBlue.com. We got lots of stuff going up there you can check out. Worth investigating. Yeah, Shepard's pointing at it for those of you on the audio. But yeah, check out Stampede Blue. We've got lots of stuff going up there. Like we said at the top of the show, follow us on Twitter at Chris Blystone, at NFL Scheme, and at Jim Campbell 81. And and rate and review the podcast. We always appreciate it. It helps us. It makes us feel nice.
But only rate it if it's going to be a good rating, please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, don't rate it if it's a bad one. If it's,
right,
Or actually, you know what? If you hate the podcast and you want to write a really nasty review, just click that 5-star thing and then write your terrible review, and that's fine.
Rip us apart.
Yeah. We'll view that like Darius Leonard. We'll just tweet horrible things at us. We'll like it on Twitter. And I actually am. Yeah, so Shepard is not quite that passive aggressive. He will come at you. He will not let it go. He will
just
not only
get that 5 stars.
That's right.
And then go ... at being terrible. And then continue on.
It's fine. Yeah.
We'll be fine with that. We'll be fine with it. All right, guys. Well, that's all we really got for you. We're going to get out of here. We're going to be excited to watch this Colts-Texans game. I think that it should be – well, okay, before we get out of here, let's do some score predictions. I'm going to throw this – I'm just throwing it at you, Jim. What do you got? Score predictions. You got to at least have the Colts with 2 touchdowns because TY's got to have those too, so they got to at least have 14.
38-17 Colts.
Oh, nice. Okay. So it's just it's all of the times they did not get to Watson, they're getting to him this time, basically.
Yep, they're done with that.
All right.
They got that Dwight Freeney energy now.
There we go.
He's just
Kamoko Trace just channeling that stuff, man. He's just going to start.
It's all Ben Banigou. Ben Banigou's going to get 5 snaps and 5 sacks. 5 snaps, 5 sacks.
That's efficiency right there.
It's on video.
I mean, would that be
on the internet?
And would that be the only 5 snaps that he's had all season long? I mean,
probably.
I don't actually know when the last time he had a snap.
I don't know either.
Oh man,
has he dressed this year?
I think he did early.
Oh, he probably had to for the COVID game.
Yeah. Yep.
He probably played even.
Yeah.
I only watched like half of it.
Yeah. All right, Shepard, what do you
got? So I'm going to go Colts 34, Texans 31.
That's another close one. Okay. I'm going to say, man, 31 for some reason is my go-to score for the Colts because it seems like they want to score right around at the 30-point range. So I'm going to say 31. I'm going to say 31-24. So I'm going to still say they hold the Texans a little bit lower, but I still think it's probably within a score. So I still think that's a Colts win, and I'll be excited to move on and hopefully it's an easy win. It'd be nice if they could just kind of run this game out, get it in hand early and run it out and stay healthy because they got the Steelers next week, and that game is obviously have major implications for the playoffs. So big game. Excited to see what happens there. And until then, guys, that's all we got for you. We're going to catch you next time. See you later.
Bye.
5 snaps.